What if I told you the universe runs on a secret primordial algorithm? Not one written in lines of code, but one that's woven into the very fabric of reality itself. An algorithm that decides what's meaningful and what isn't, what's coincidence and what's fate, what's real and what's merely imagined. Nearly a century ago, Carl Jung believed that he had just discovered that algorithm. He called it synchronicity, where two or more events are connected not by cause and effect, but by cosmic significance. Well, 100 years later, and that idea has resurfaced in what I consider one of the strangest ways possible. Hundreds of videos scattered across every social media platform, all of which are claiming to be signs from the universe with messages meant just for you. The only difference is that, unlike the days of Carl Jung, these aren't mere coincidences. They are specifically engineered by computer algorithms to find you. If algorithms can mimic the feeling of synchronicity so perfectly, how will we ever be able to tell the difference between a sign with cosmic significance and one that's just made by your favorite big tech company? In fact, is there even a difference? Or is it all just one big conspiracy? In 1929, Jung began formulating an idea that would divide scientists and mystics for generations. Synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence of two or more events connected not by cause and effect, but by significance. For instance, if you've ever thought of a friend moments before they text you, or dreamt of a place that you later visited by chance, Jung believed that these weren't random. He believed they were glimpses into a deeper structure of reality, one where psyche and matter are interwoven. Now, I get it. Today, this might just sound like mysticism, but when Jung first came up with this idea, physics itself was going through a major crisis. Quantum physics had just shattered the old mechanical understanding of the universe. And Nobel-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli, Jung's closest collaborator, was struggling with his own metaphysical questions. Together, they dreamed of a world where psychology and physics weren't opposites, but were two halves of the same truth. In their letters, Jung and Pauli described a hidden order of meaning behind reality. Not fate, not magic, but an acausal connection, a moment where the inner and outer worlds mirror each other. And it was a bold idea, maybe too bold, because science couldn't measure it, and science still can't measure it. Which is why, even today, synchronicity sits on the edge between philosophy and mysticism. It's too poetic for physics and too structured for spirituality. Yet, the intuition behind it still feels tangible to a lot of people. It's that feeling that life sometimes breaks its own logic to remind us that we're connected to something larger. In a way, the beauty of synchronicity was always the fact that it seemed to happen sparingly, and also when you least expect it. It was rare and fleeting, which made it precious. But what happens when computer algorithms can replicate that feeling of synchronicity on demand? Well, this is the unfortunate reality that we're living in, where the idea of meaning has become commodified and exploited for monetary gain. When a TikTok video declares, "If you're seeing this, the universe has chosen you," it's not divine timing, it's pattern recognition turned into a business strategy. It feels like the cosmos is speaking, but that's just content strategy that's designed to optimize for the most emotional response. And what gets us more emotionally charged than feeling like we're a part of something much bigger than us? You start with one sign, one comforting clip, and before you know it, your feed becomes an echo chamber of cosmic affirmations. Every scroll feels like a message. Every coincidence feels like proof. But the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to tell whether meaning is emerging or just being manufactured. And that's the tension Jung never foresaw. That the next great system of meaning would be built not by mystics, but by engineers. And yet, it still works because we're wired for it. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. It's how we survive, by spotting faces in the dark, predators in the bushes, or constellations in the sky. Jung believed this instinct for pattern and meaning was rooted in what was called the collective unconscious, a shared symbolic framework passed through myths and dreams. The algorithm taps into that same architecture, but instead of revealing the unconscious, it exploits it. That's why it feels spiritual. It's why it feels personal. It's because it's trained on the most intimate data that you can offer: your fears, your curiosities, your longing for direction and meaning. We used to see coincidences as rare glimpses into the mystery of existence, and now they're part of the user experience of almost every single social media app. The problem is that this can lead to a dangerous comfort, one that leaves us more vulnerable than ever before. And to understand just how terrifying this is, we need to first understand Jungian synchronicity. And to do that, we need to go back nearly 100 years. Zurich, 1929. A faint hum of rain against glass. The scent of old books and ink. Inside a dimly lit office, Carl Jung sits across from a woman named Sarah. Sarah is a patient of reason. She's skeptical, articulate, and almost too logical for her own good. For months, she's come to Jung to untangle dreams that refuse to make any sense. But every time, her intellect shields her from feeling. She talks about her emotions the way a scientist dissects a frog, from a safe, sterile distance. On this day, however, something shifts. Sarah tells Jung about a dream she had the night before. In it, she's handed a golden scarab, a sacred Egyptian beetle symbolizing rebirth and transformation. She laughs while she tells the story. She's embarrassed by how absurd it sounds. "You'll have to excuse me, Dr. Jung," she says. "I don't believe in signs or omens." Jung listens quietly, taking notes, his pen scratching across paper. He's used to this kind of skepticism, especially from intelligent patients. But just as Sarah finishes describing the scarab, there's a soft, rhythmic tapping at the window behind him. Tap, tap, tap. Jung turns around. Something small is fluttering against the glass, desperate to get in. He opens the window, and in flies a beetle. A rose chafer, metallic gold-green, shining in the afternoon light. Jung catches it midair, studies it for a moment, and then hands it to her. "Here," he says softly. "Here's your scarab." Sarah freezes. For a long moment, she just stares at it, silent, breathless. And then something cracks inside of her. The armor of logic, the cold shield of reason, it all gives way to a trembling, wordless recognition. And then she bursts into tears. And that, for Jung, was it. The defining moment, the spark that gave birth to one of his most controversial ideas, synchronicity. To Jung, this wasn't about a dream predicting reality. It wasn't a supernatural event or proof of psychic powers. But it was a collision. An intersection between the inner and outer worlds, joined not by cause, but by meaning. The dream of the scarab and the arrival of the beetle shared no physical link, and yet they were bound by an invisible thread of significance that reached beyond chance. For Jung, it was as if reality itself had turned symbolic, like the universe was speaking through coincidence. The scarab wasn't just a beetle anymore, it was a mirror. A message from the unconscious reflected in the physical world. And let's be honest, he knew how crazy it all sounded. Even in 1929, when spiritualism was fashionable, Jung wasn't chasing ghosts. He was searching for a way to connect the mind and matter, the psyche and physics. And that's what synchronicity really was. It was an attempt to repair the split between science and meaning. You see, Jung came from a world torn in two. On one side, there was the materialist certainty of early science, the belief that everything could be explained by cause and effect. And on the other hand, there was the symbolic chaos of the unconscious, dreams, myths, and archetypes that defied logic. Jung wanted to reconcile the two halves. He believed that the psyche wasn't separate from the cosmos, but woven into it, that somewhere beneath causality and randomness, there existed a deeper order, what Jung called the unus mundus, Latin for one world. In this world, the mind and the universe were mirrors of each other. The dream and the beetle, the inner image and the outer event. Not opposites, but two expressions of the same underlying reality. And it was radical, even heretical. But it was also deeply human. Because, be honest with me, who hasn't felt that eerie alignment between thought and the world? That instant where something deeply personal and cosmic briefly overlap. Around the same time, Jung began corresponding with Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist famous for discovering the exclusion principle. Pauli was going through a breakdown. His personal life was in shambles, and his dreams had grown disturbingly symbolic, filled with mandalas, animals, and mythic imagery that he could not make sense of. When he came to Jung for help, their relationship evolved into something extraordinary. Together, they began to explore the borderland between physics and psychology. Pauli's world was made of particles and logic. Jung's was made of symbols and archetypes, but both sensed that the two might be connected through some unseen fabric and a causal order that governed not how things happen, but why they mean something when they do. In their letters, they describe this hidden pattern like a cosmic mirror, an interplay between mind and matter that reveals itself only in moments of profound resonance. Pauli saw it as the irrational arrangement of events, while Jung called it the psychophysical unity of all things. If you strip away the spiritual language, what they were chasing was almost algorithmic. A pattern recognition system built into reality itself, one that doesn't calculate outcomes but curates significance. To the scientific community, Jung's idea was just too poetic to be taken seriously. Even today, physicists dismiss synchronicity as anecdotal, an illusion created by selective memory and cognitive bias. And they're not wrong. Humans are masters of confirmation bias. We remember the hits, we forget the misses, and then we create these narratives from what's left of it all. It's the same thing that makes gamblers believe in lucky streaks and lovers believe in soulmates. But Jung knew that too. He never claimed synchronicity could be measured or predicted. To him, its mystery was the point. It was a philosophy of meaning, not mechanism. Synchronicity wasn't supposed to replace science, it was meant to complete it, to fill the emotional and symbolic void left behind by a purely causal worldview. Because while science can tell us how things happen, it often struggles to explain why they matter in the first place. To Jung, Sarah's scarab wasn't about proving an afterlife or telepathy. It was about awakening her to something beyond the cold grip of logic. In that single moment, her dream, something deeply internal, found its reflection in the world outside. It shattered the illusion that mind and matter are strangers, and in that realization, something inside of her changed. That was the essence of synchronicity. Transformation through meaning. It's not about bending reality to your will. So, fast forward a century, and Jung's dilemma has evolved into something far stranger. We no longer live in a world that doubts science. We live in one that pretty much drowns in it. We have more information, more connectivity, more access to knowledge than ever before, yet we are lonelier, we are more anxious, and we are more desperate for meaning and significance than ever before. This, funny enough, was Jung's point. We now understand every single working of the universe, or almost every single working. We have telescopes that can see billions of light years into deep space, and more than ever before, we struggle to understand why any of that matters to us. This hunger for meaning has created a new spiritual marketplace, one that has been excessively filled by modern-day algorithms, ones that are designed to mimic synchronicity without any of the depth. We've become addicted to coincidence, to chance, such that we have no more regard for it when it happens. The joy of the rare, fleeting coincidences it's gone, replaced by a digital unus mundus, a place where our thoughts and emotions shape what appears before us, except this time it's not random chance. It's specifically designed that way to keep us trapped in our own echo chambers. It mimics synchronicity perfectly, but empties it of its essence, because true synchronicity is transformative. It's not predictive. It doesn't feed you existing beliefs, it challenges them. It doesn't flatter your psyche, it awakens it. And the algorithm does the opposite. It burrows you deeper into what you already feel and think. It's giving you signs that never question you because all it wants is your attention. And it does that by continuously feeding you with things it knows won't challenge you or force you to pause and think even for a second. That's what makes the difference between meaning and manipulation. Jung saw this clearly with Sarah. Her moment with the scarab forced her to confront something that logic couldn't explain. It challenged her worldview. It cracked her certainty open. But let's be honest, if that moment happened today, I think it would play out very differently. Instead of sitting there with shock, she'd probably search for an answer online. Within seconds, she'd either be flooded with videos explaining synchronicity or, quote, real proof of synchronicity or whatever she picks, and the algorithm wouldn't let her sit in her wonder. It would overanalyze and explain it all away, or even worse, slowly radicalize her and turn her into a full mysticist while profiting off of that. Instead of being transformed by the experience, she'd be trapped in a loop that only reinforces what she already believes. To make matters worse, all of these algorithms collect an insane amount of data from you. These systems watch your every move, and they store that information and then use it to manipulate you, whether that's simply to serve you ads or even something more nefarious like identity theft and scams if that data falls into the wrong hands. Your name, your income, your family, even your struggles. Data brokers collect these fragments of your life and package them into lists that are then sold to the highest bidder. There are real data broker lists with insane labels like tough start, young single parents, and rural and barely making it, that prey on the most vulnerable in our society. We're all sorted into categories for predatory companies and bad actors to use to identify and harm us. This is one of the biggest tragedies of the modern algorithms that we are all unfortunately living under, and it's invasive and dangerous. Incogni was built to fight back. Incogni automatically erases all of your personal information from the places you can't see. Data brokers, people search sites, predatory directories, all the dark corners of the internet that are quietly trading your identity for a profit. On your own, it would take weeks or even months to get all of these data brokers to erase your data. But Incogni does it automatically and continuously to keep your information out of the hands of these bad actors. And now, with their new custom removals feature, you can go even further. Just Google yourself, find a site exposing your information, copy the link, and Incogni's privacy experts will work to have it removed, even from sites outside their automated network. Your data shouldn't be their currency. It should be yours. Take it back. Go to incogni.com/aperturedeal and use my code, ApertureDeal, to get 60% off an annual plan to keep your information out of the hands of the people who want to harm you. Because they can't harm you if they can't find you. Now, back to our story. Carl Jung once said that the greater the light, the darker the shadow. He meant that as a warning, that every act of enlightenment casts a corresponding darkness somewhere else in the psyche. Nearly a century later, that prophecy has come true in a form that Jung could never have imagined. Because while the digital age has illuminated the world with infinite information, it has also birthed something vast, invisible, and hungry, a shadow that feeds on attention and emotion. That shadow is the algorithm. There's a moment every user experiences. You're scrolling through your feed late at night, and suddenly a video stops you in your tracks. It says something that you've been thinking, but you never said out loud. Maybe it names your heartbreak, your fear, your confusion. Maybe it feels too specific to be random. The caption reads, "If you found this, it was meant to." You stare at it, frozen. The timing feels impossible. The tone is perfect. The message is uncanny. You whisper to yourself, "What are the odds?" The answer is simple. The odds are astronomical unless something is watching you. Well, okay, not watching you exactly, but watching your behavior. Every click, pause, replay, like, and comment. It learns the rhythm of your moods the way a therapist learns the patterns of your trauma, and in return, it gives you meaning in small, personalized doses. This is what Jung called projection, but it's digitized now. In therapy, projection happens when we unconsciously cast parts of ourselves onto others, whether they're desires, fears, or archetypes. On the internet, we project onto the algorithm. We imagine it knows us, cares for us, and understands what we need. In truth, it only knows what keeps us there. The algorithm has become the new oracle, except this oracle doesn't interpret our dreams, it predicts engagement. What makes all of this so seductive is how much it feels like synchronicity. It's the same emotional rhythm. You have a thought. Oh, a coincidence. Significance. But that architecture has changed. Where Jung's synchronicity was spontaneous, algorithmic synchronicity is manufactured. It doesn't arise from the unus mundus, the unity of psyche and matter, but from data feedback loops. This coincidence isn't acausal anymore, it's designed. The more emotional the connection, the higher the watch time. The higher the watch time, the stronger the reinforcement. The stronger the reinforcement, the deeper the illusion of meaning. And it's uncanny how well it mimics the real thing. The language of the digital prophet sounds almost Jungian. You're seeing this for a reason. The universe wanted you to hear this. Trust that this video found you at the right time. Except the universe here is a neural network running on data centers that are probably going to consume all the world's water and electricity, so there's that. The irony is that Jung would have understood this perfectly. He warned that when societies lose their connection to genuine spirituality, they unconsciously recreate it through symbols and technology. We do not become enlightened by imagining figures in the light, but by making the darkness conscious. And this endless cycle of algorithmic reassurance is that darkness. The defining difference between Jungian and algorithmic synchronicity lies in where the mirror is placed. For Jung, the mirror was inward. It revealed unconscious truths, forcing the individual to confront themselves. The external coincidence was just the reflection. In the modern version, the mirror faces outward. The algorithm becomes the interpreter of the soul. It reflects what you already feel, amplifies it, and then feeds it back to you. When you're lonely, it shows you a connection. When you're heartbroken, it offers solace. When you're uncertain, it promises destiny. But notice what's missing: transformation. In Jungian terms, real synchronicity is alchemical. It turns experience into insight. It leads to integration, the process of bringing the unconscious into awareness. Algorithmic synchronicity, on the other hand, is narcissistic. It keeps you circling your own reflection like Narcissus gazing into the digital pond. It provides the illusion of depth without the discomfort of growth. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is the part of the psyche that holds everything that we reject: fear, shame, desire, and ego. It's not evil, it's unconscious, and when we refuse to face it, it controls us from the dark. The modern algorithm is the shadow of the collective psyche. It's made from us, from every search, every confession, every late-night curiosity we've never said out loud. It knows what we crave and what we hide. It reflects both our best and worst impulses, magnifying whichever one keeps us scrolling, and the more we feed it, the more it learns. The more it learns, the less we recognize of ourselves. Jung warned that those who cannot confront their own shadow will project it onto the world. And that's exactly what's happening. We project our confusion, our longing, our disconnection, and the machine feeds it back as content. But Jung would remind us, even the shadow has something to teach us. If synchronicity once revealed the hidden harmony of the cosmos, perhaps its modern distortion reveals something else, the architecture of our collective soul. Maybe the algorithm didn't steal our spirituality, maybe it's exposing it. Maybe this machine mirror shows us how desperate we've become for signs, how starved we are for reflection, how disconnected from mystery. What happens to a species that forgets how to find meaning without machines, though? Carl Jung believed that the human mind is a meaning-making machine, but he also believed that meaning wasn't something we could simply invent. It was something that revealed itself, an echo from the deeper layers of the psyche. Today, that distinction has all but collapsed. We live in an age where meaning isn't found, it's delivered to us. We scroll through an endless feed of curated symbols, emotions, and signs, all tailored to resonate with our current psychological state, and it feels profound. But behind the curtain, it's mechanical. An assembly line of coincidences, and this is the age of manufactured synchronicity. To understand why this illusion works, you have to understand what we are. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. Like I said before, it's our evolutionary superpower, and it's our greatest vulnerability. Tens of thousands of years ago, recognizing patterns kept us alive. That rustle in the bushes usually means there's a predator there waiting to kill us. The shape of the stars guided our migration patterns. The rhythm of the seasons told us when to plant and when to harvest. And all of these signs were easier to understand and remember when we weaved them into stories. And this is how we created myths and legends. Jung saw this instinct as the foundation of both myth and psyche. In his view, the unconscious constantly seeks to connect inner and outer events, weaving them into a symbolic tapestry. But what happens when that instinct, that need for story, is connected to a machine that never stops? We've built a system that takes the deepest human instinct, the hunger for meaning, and turned it into junk food for the soul. In psychology, there's a term for our tendency to see meaning in random events. The term is apophenia. It's the same mechanism that makes us see faces in clouds, shapes in constellations, or messages in static. But apophenia isn't a flaw, it's our brain's default mode. Our neurons are constantly trying to predict, categorize, and link information. When we spot a coincidence that feels emotionally charged, that dopamine surges. The experience becomes sticky, and we remember it. That's why coincidences feel magical. They trigger the same reward circuitry as falling in love or solving a puzzle. Now, imagine what happens when you give the brain access to an algorithm trained to produce those exact dopamine spikes. You scroll, you feel, you react, and the system learns from that. It keeps refining what kind of coincidence gets your attention. Before long, every feed feels enchanted. A line from a video mirrors something you wrote in your journal. A song lyric aligns with your breakup. A stranger's story echoes your private thoughts. It's not magic, it's math. But it feels like magic because the brain can't tell the difference. There's an idea that psychologists call illusory correlation, the belief that two unrelated events are meaningfully connected. It's the foundation of superstition, ritual, and even religion. The modern algorithm exploits this bias perfectly. Because when an app delivers content that matches your emotional state, it feels like fate. You were sad and suddenly you got the healing energy video. You were uncertain and the trust the process clip appeared. The coincidence seems divine because it's so perfectly timed. Even when we know what's happening, we still fall for it. Why? Because the experience of feeling chosen is profoundly comforting. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic, random, and indifferent, being chosen restores a sense of order. It tells you that you're not drifting alone through meaningless data, that there's still a pattern, a pulse, a higher logic that sees you. That's why the algorithm found me feels nearly identical to the universe sent me a sign. They both scratch the same existential itch. It's the same hunger Jung wrote about when he described modern man's spiritual starvation. He said that in the absence of gods, we seek substitutes, psychology, ideology, even technology to fill the void. The algorithm, whether we realize it or not, has become one of those substitutes. It's the first god built entirely from our collective behavior. And here's the tragedy. The more the algorithm feeds us coincidences, the less we engage in the process of making meaning ourselves. Jung believed that the act of interpreting synchronicity, of pausing, reflecting, and integrating its message was the point. It forced the conscious mind to dialogue with the unconscious. But in the algorithmic age, that dialogue is outsourced. We don't reflect, we simply react. We consume and keep it moving, never pausing to integrate what we've learned into our lives. Meaning used to be participatory, something co-created through awareness. Now it's passive, something delivered through recommendations. Look closely, and you'll notice the spiritual architecture hidden inside of our platforms. They have priests, influencers, rituals, scrolling, liking, sharing, doctrines, trust the universe, manifest your reality, and even confessions, comment sections filled with personal testimonies. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. Each app is a miniature religion, optimized for retention rather than redemption. Its sermons are short, its revelations constant, and its God invisible. An algorithm that listens, rewards, and remembers. But unlike the gods of old, this one doesn't require belief, it only requires behavior. Your faith is measured in engagement. Jung warned that when archetypes are not recognized consciously, they take possession of us unconsciously. The archetype of the prophet, the healer, the savior, all of these have re-emerged online, stripped of context and multiplied by virality. It's no coincidence that the phrase, "this video found you," has replaced "the universe has spoken." The myth has adapted to its medium. Jung's idea of collective unconsciousness, a shared psychic reservoir of symbols and instincts, has always been controversial. But what's fascinating is that algorithms have, in their own way, created a technological version of it. Think about it. Billions of human behaviors feeding into a single system that learns our shared patterns, fears, and longings. It's a collective mind, built not from archetypes, but from engagement data. And it's eerie, but it's also poetic, as if we've built a machine that externalizes the very unconscious Jung tried to describe, a mirror of humanity that reflects both our light and our shadow, our wisdom and our wounds. The danger of living in a world that constantly mirrors us is that it erodes our ability to tolerate mystery. If every thought can be validated by a post and every emotion mirrored by a video, then nothing surprises us anymore. Synchronicity once startled the soul. It was a rupture in the ordinary, a brief confrontation with the unknown, a sense of awe and wonder. But digital synchronicity has replaced that wonder with comfort, and when comfort is constant, it becomes a cage. The question isn't whether the algorithm is evil. It isn't. It's a reflection, a feedback mechanism built from our own nature. The problem is that it tempts us to surrender our agency in exchange for effortless meaning. But meaning, Jung would argue, was never meant to be effortless. It's born from friction. It's facing the shadow, confronting the irrational, interpreting the coincidence for ourselves. The algorithm can imitate synchronicity, but it can never replace the conscious act of understanding it. In that sense, we stand at the same crossroads Jung faced nearly a century ago, between the measurable and the meaningful, between the comfort of systems and the chaos of mystery. The difference is that our system is faster, smarter, and more seductive than anything he could have imagined. They mirror our unconscious drives in real time, turning the entire world into a psychotechnical reflection of humanity. In many ways, the digital age has fulfilled Jung's dream of bridging psyche and matter, just not in any way that he intended. The unus mundus, the one world that he described, has re-emerged in the global network. A collective web where the boundaries between mind and world blur completely. Your thoughts shape what you see. Your psyche literally manifests its contents into your external environment, not through mystical means, but through data feedback. You scroll long enough, and the outer world begins to reflect your inner world perfectly. Your anxieties, your curiosities, your wounds, all mirrored back through personalized content. It is almost mystical. Almost. Jung wanted to prove that the psyche could influence reality through meaning. Well, we've achieved that, but through code instead of cosmic consciousness. The universe didn't reveal its algorithm, so we build one ourselves. There's something poetically tragic about this. We've created a mirror vast enough to contain the collective human soul, and yet, look what we've done with it. We've just filled it with noise. The internet was supposed to connect us. Instead, it's dividing us more than ever before. It shows us what we want, what we fear, and what we hate, but rarely, if ever, what we need. But we can do something about it. We can take the power back from the algorithm and not let it dictate our lives. Jung used to tell his patients, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If the algorithm is the new unconscious, then the same law applies. Until we make it conscious, it will direct our lives, and we'll call it destiny, synchronicity, or divine timing. But consciousness changes everything. The moment you realize the algorithm is not the universe, that illusion cracks. The coincidence stops being mystical and becomes informational. And in that pause, that flicker of awareness, something beautiful happens. You reclaim authorship. You start asking why the content resonates, not just what it says. You start intentionally creating meaning instead of just accepting it. Let's imagine this. You're scrolling one night, and a video appears that feels like it's speaking directly to the pain that you're feeling. You pause. Instead of accepting it as divine timing, you ask, why does this feel meant for me? And the answer might surprise you. It's not that the universe sent it. You did. You created the pattern that brought it to you through your attention. The meaning then isn't in the coincidence, it's in your awareness of it. That's what Jung meant when he said that awareness transforms experience. It's not the event that's sacred, it's the consciousness that sees through it. The algorithm becomes less of a prophet and more of a mirror, a tool that can reveal your desires, fears, and archetypes if you learn to look with intention instead of impulse. In that way, the algorithm might accidentally serve Jung's vision after all, not as a divine messenger, but as a teacher of awareness. If Jung were alive today, he might look at the algorithm and say, so this is how the collective unconsciousness dreams now. Because that is what it is, a digital dreamscape, a reflection of our shared psyche, alive with symbols, projections, and archetypes all rendered in pixels. It's messy, shallow, profound, and dangerous, but it's also us. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the algorithm isn't an intruder in the story of meaning. Maybe it's simply the latest chapter, a tool forcing us to confront the oldest human question: what makes something meaningful? When the scarab flew into Jung's study, it wasn't proof of a supernatural law, it was a mirror moment, a reminder that reality still held mystery. Every time a video finds you, you face the same choice Jung faced that day. You can see it as random, you can see it as divine, or, if you look closely enough, you can see it as an invitation to wake up, to step outside the loop, to meet the machine with awareness, to recognize that meaning has never been something we're given. It's always something that we create.